Despite being a very family-friendly series catered towards children, including man-children, Pokemon is still not safe from its share of controversies. Animal cruelty, violence, racism, gambling, religious themes, xenophobia, and much more, which has led the franchise to see quite a lot of censorship. The anime is the go-to and biggest example of this. What may appear in the Japanese version is either changed for the Western release, or there just isn't a Western release. Entire episodes being unaired, banned, or drastically changed, and this wasn't just a thing for the West. Over in Japan, they also did the same thing. Most people probably know the story of Computer Warrior Porygon, an episode of the anime that never aired in the West, and for good reason. This episode was plagued with tons of rapid flashing lights, which sent over 600 children to hospital for epilepsy symptoms. There was also the episode Legend of Mini Ryu, where various characters are wielding firearms. There is one scene where Ash literally has a gun pointed at his head. I'm surprised 4Kids didn't go the Yu-Gi-Oh route and turn the guns into evil pointing fingers. But of course, there is the very well-known episode Beauty and the Beach, where James from Team Rocket wore an inflatable bodysuit which gave him breasts so that he could win a beauty contest. This episode, unlike the others, did air over in the West, but the scene was completely removed. However, people are so fixated on that part of the episode they don't realise that in the Japanese version of this episode, an old man says to Misty, "I will be looking forward to having fun with you in a few years," while he stares at her chest. May I remind you all that Pokemon is a series targeted towards children, and Misty is 12 years old. Censorship in Pokemon isn't just limited to the anime, as they have also extended into the video games as well as the trading card game. The video games only contain slight changes, for example some of the trainer and Pokemon sprites. For the TCG, some of the cards only needed slight alterations to their artwork, while others needed to be completely changed. Pokemon doesn't have a huge number of censored cards compared to other card games. I'm looking at you, Yu-Gi-Oh! Seriously, there are so many censored Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. These changes are bound to happen given just how vastly different Eastern and Western cultures are to begin with. Even if the change is so small that no one would notice, it does make a huge difference, and if gone unchecked, could potentially hurt the image of the Pokemon franchise. So without further ado, let's take a look at all of these censored cards in the Pokemon trading card game. We'll start off with a Pokemon that actually has multiple censored cards, and it's a Pokemon that I imagine everybody knows the story about, Jinx. For those of you who don't know, Jinx is a Pokemon whose design is believed to be based off of Ganguro or Gyaru Japanese street fashion, where girls would bleach their hair, wear fake tan, as well as bright and bold clothing and makeup, a style that is often seen as rebellious towards the social and aesthetic standards of Japanese women. However, when Westerners saw this design, they didn't see a fashion trend. They saw something completely different. Backlash and controversy quickly ensued, with many people calling Jinx's design racist, saying it resembles blackface. Blackface was used primarily in theatrical performances in order to portray black or dark-skinned characters by covering one's face in makeup, shoe polish, or burnt cork. So basically, it's a racial stereotype. And because of that, the Pokemon Company was forced to change Jinx's design. Instead of the face being pure black with big pink lips, it was instead changed to purple. Because of this, Jinx had all of its current cards reprinted with the new design, and all of the Pokemon's future cards would follow suit. In Japan, however, they still used Jinx's original design for a while, but eventually also adopted the change and printed all future cards with the new design.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
In the first few generations of Pokemon, there was a building called the Game Corner, which was basically a casino featuring slot machines and roulette tables. You could exchange your Pokédollars for coins and gamble them away in hopes of winning more coins, which you could exchange for certain items. This obviously didn't sit well with a lot of people as it promoted gambling towards children. The Game Corner would eventually be removed entirely from future generations, or would be replaced by an arcade as gambling laws in video games started to become a lot more strict. At the time, however, this was only a thing in the Western releases of Pokemon, as in Japan the Game Corner stayed around for quite a while, but eventually had to be removed in all future games as well. There were only 2 cards released during this time that featured a slot machine type game in their artwork: Arcade Game and Coin Flip Game, both released in Neo Genesis. The Japanese versions of the card clearly show that these machines are located in some type of casino or arcade. So how do you think they censored these cards in the West? Well, you're wrong because they just zoomed in the picture. Unless that was your answer, in which case, congratulations. This change is just bizarre. I wouldn't really call this censoring because the image so clearly shows there is a slot machine game being played. That's a decision they decided to take. It's a confusing choice, probably could have done something different, but this is what we were given. Sometimes cards can be changed and censored due to very minor things that would not translate well in Western cultures. Grimer from Team Rocket had its artwork changed, as on the Japanese version of the card, its eyes are clearly looking up in the direction of a girl walking past, insinuating that it's looking up her skirt. So when the card was released in the West, they made Grimer look straight forward instead. Sabrina's Gengar from Gym Heroes also had its art changed, as in the Japanese version, Gengar was standing in a graveyard of some kind, with cross-like gravestones being clearly visible in the background. So when the card was printed in the West, they just removed the gravestones. The background is still the exact same, though it's hard to tell due to the card's foiling pattern. Speaking of Sabrina, she also had another censored card with Sabrina's Gaze, also released in Gym Heroes. In the Japanese artwork, it kind of looks like she's giving you the middle finger, though I don't see it, to be honest. To me, it just looks like she's using her psychic powers to make the Master Ball float, which I imagine was the intention, but apparently this was seen as inappropriate, so for the Western release, the artwork was completely changed and instead just shows her throwing a Pokeball. The other gym leader set, Gym Challenge, also had one of its cards censored with Koga's Ninja Trick. On the Japanese version, the yellow puff of smoke in the background had a symbol that kind of looked like a swastika, so for the Western release it was changed to whatever this is supposed to be. These censorships aren't just limited to older cards, as we've also seen some more newer cards in the TCG be censored, such as Magmortar from Dragons Exalted. The Japanese artwork features its arm cannon pointing towards the viewer with visible smoke coming out of it as if it just fired a shot, so for the Western release they changed the artwork to instead have its arm cannon pointing upwards. However, these next two cards are without a doubt probably the most well-known cases of censorship due to just how ridiculous the original Japanese art was. I honestly don't know what they were thinking when they decided to print cards with this as the artwork. Those cards being Moo Moo Milk from Neo Genesis and probably the most famous, Misty's Tears from Gym Challenge. Moo Moo Milk's Japanese artwork depicts a centret suckling on a cow-like udder from some type of bottle. This one is just bizarre. I kind of understand what they were going for, but was this really necessary? Needless to say, this had to be changed for the Western release, and the artwork we got instead shows Cleffa raiding the local milk farm. While this artwork could be seen as inappropriate considering Pokemon's target audience, Misty's Tears is far, far worse. The Japanese art simply depicts Misty holding a Staryu while crying. Now, that doesn't sound bad. However, if you look a little bit closer at this artwork, you'll notice something else. Misty is very clearly naked in this image. May I remind you all of something very important that makes this image even worse? Misty is 12 years old. While in Japan, naked bodies in cartoons was fairly common around the time, the same cannot be said for the West, especially when it's a naked body of a minor. So this artwork obviously needed to be changed for the Western release. And what we got instead was a close-up of Misty crying while a Squirtle is wiping away her tears. And that is every censored card we've had in the Pokemon trading card game. Magmortar, to my knowledge, is the most recent and hopefully last card to be censored, and by recent I mean over 20 years ago. The Pokemon Company has been very careful with the art of their cards ever since, considering just how popular the franchise has become. I believe episodes of the anime were and are still being censored on occasion, but most of the time it's just small changes and nothing too drastic. Sometimes even franchises made for kids can see their fair share of controversies and issues when being adapted into different regions and markets. Back then, Pokemon, while it was big, was nowhere near the titan that it is today, being the biggest media franchise in the world. And with that level of success means keeping your public image clean, especially with a series like Pokemon. I honestly don't think we will ever see another card be censored in the TCG. The gap between Neo Genesis and Dragons Exalted was already big enough, and I imagine that was just a small mistake. A mistake that has been added as another example of censorship in the Pokemon TCG.